One of the core features of Dragonflight is actually going to be professions, and I have to say, at first glance, it's ridiculous. This is the new UI, and honestly, just looking at it, I'm already confused. There's so many things that I could talk about immediately here, but the first thing that comes to mind is, what is all this? I really don't know, and I'm going to tell you right now, I did not read the posts that they offered, not necessarily because I wasn't interested, it's just, it just seemed like a lot of words at the time, right? So it actually worked out really well for me because now I'm able to give my opinion on this as somebody who will potentially not have read anything coming into the expansion's launch. And I feel like that might actually be the biggest issue for them, is that they really are overwhelming people with this. They're really reworking this so severely. It's almost like it's a different system. Like, to be honest, this is so different than how professions worked for years, and I'm talking about like decades, that it's actually probably going to get some hate just because of that. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be looked at as a good thing in the future, but they said these words, and I think it's kind of scary to even hear them, that they want professions to be a system of gearing on the same level as rating or Mythic Plus. Now, when I think about Mythic Plus, I think about content that I could spend 40 to 80 hours a week doing. Obviously, that's not rating. Typically, that's not how it would work. So, they're probably in between there somewhere. I doubt there will be like actual infinite progression you can do with this, but it does look like there's going to be a lot of stuff. But just the new UI in general looks quite good, and this would work the same way with all the old content as well. It's really cool, and the big thing that I think I'm really interested in seeing, though, is what's actually going to happen with gathering. I didn't realize this until I got on the alpha, but the actual heart and soul of the profession is, to me at least, gathering. And they actually have like a lot of new, you can see it right here. I don't, this part I just don't understand, and I'm not sure if we know exactly how this works yet. But this new quality thing, it seems to be like a really big feature. And there's also quality of gathering and the ore and stuff that you're going to use too. So, like, for me, I look back on Classic's profession system as like the pinnacle. This was absolutely the best, and I have to say, really the only time it was remarkable in WoW's history. And that was because there was so many different materials. Now, if you hear me talk about it maybe during leveling challenges, you might hear me say that I kind of dislike that. It's good and bad at times, because like for leveling up, it's very difficult to have a profession. Like, I tried this with a leveling challenge I did recently, and I went alchemy, and it's almost impossible to actually keep up on the herbs you need because they're all in different zones. So you're not going to keep traveling between zones, right? So that the game doesn't work that way anymore. So how could they mix it up? Yeah, I don't really know. I think having more consumables and more things come from 5-mans or other content in the game, I think that would be a really good start. And it seems like they might be doing stuff like that, because then you start to take a look at what they have here for actual profession patterns. And there's a lot of them. And I don't really know, what I expect to happen here with all these patterns, or what I expect to be crafted. And this is certainly not a video on how to do any of this stuff, but I'm telling you right now, it's kind of overwhelming, man. I feel pretty overwhelmed by it. I feel like, man, I don't really understand what the goals are with a lot of this stuff. I think once I see it and there's not DNT plans with random words and all this weird stuff going on, yeah, maybe it'll be more obvious. But I am genuinely worried about what a new player, especially somebody who might be also new to WoW's mechanics, what this might look like to them. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to the old systems. I've spent a lot of time with professions over the years, and it's like, this is what I'm talking about here. Like, where are you getting this stuff? Awakened Order. Right now you can just buy it, but it's crazy. This is a big change, and there's a lot going on. This whole inspiration mechanic. On top of that, there's this specialization mechanic, which they just introduced in this build. We were taking a look at it yesterday as well. Seems like it has reset on me somehow, but regardless, yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, this whole thing, it basically just allows you to get better at crafting. Somebody described it to me in stream yesterday, saying like they think like the overall prospects of all of this stuff is you spend more and more time with the profession, and it just makes it easier for you to make the best gear in the game. And that's quite interesting to me, of course. Being able to craft like best in slot gear, that's quite interesting. And if it works the way it sounds like it might work in my head, I could see myself spending a lot of time with it. So immediately already I'm thinking about making this character, well, not this one, but my main Death Knight now. I think I will make that blacksmithing. Originally, I wanted to make my alt blacksmithing and jewel crafting. I thought that would be a good investment of my time, but man, I would have to spend a lot of time on that character, it feels like. So I don't know exactly what the outlook is going to be like in actual endgame, progression pathways. Obviously, I assume you're still going to be able to just straight out ignore it, and there won't be any difference there. But yeah, I have to say this is very interesting to me, and even though it could be overwhelming, and I'm confused by a lot of what I'm reading, I'm really excited for this, because if this works out well, and if they build a good, seamless UI for this, and things look good, and people are interested in what it offers, it could be very good. And I'd never actually played these other games, but from what I've been told, crafting in other MMOs is a really, really big part of them. Now, to me, in the past, if you told me that, I would say like, well, that's probably because those games are focusing on world content instead of in-game, goals like progression level dungeon content. And I don't know what WoW does if it starts doing both all of a sudden. So the question is just where and how do the professions interface with the content? I like to believe that they have the working plan to make it happen well, but I've already seen a lot of people complaining that, they don't want to have to do dungeons to get these patterns, or they don't want to have to do content that isn't whatever the hell they want to do in the game. And that's where things start to get really murky for me, because I always assumed that was the case in the other games. It was basically like the casual progression pathway. Like you had raiding, which requires like an immense amount of coordination and a lot of skill, but it's not an immense amount of hours that most people put into it. Then you have Mythic Plus that requires an immense amount of hours, or could potentially benefit you if you have an immense amount of hours. And then there would be professions, where it would be like, just do whatever the hell you want, and eventually you'll get gear. So I'm not opposed to that, of course, but it just makes me wonder how all three of these things are going to work together. And at a first glance, the profession looks awesome, but the concept of making best in slot gear, that doesn't look that awesome to me. The question is just what the pacing is going to be like for me, because even right now on my Death Knight, I am held back by gear at times, so it'll be nice. But if the best way to get gear is to do the profession, I'm out. Like, that's not great. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think that's probably going to be what happens. If you look at the major change they made to PvP gearing in Shadowlands, and you remember Season 1, that's probably what's going to happen again here. Professions are going to be the best in slot way to get gear. They'll be the most reliable, and this is kind of what people are asking for, so this is kind of why it never was going to work in the first place. It's just going to be too good, and I hate to say it, but it sounds like it might turn the game into the pay-to-win concept. Seemingly you're going to be able to buy all of this stuff. I don't know what is and isn't BOP or BOE, but it's going to be a new time in this game's history. Let's put it that way. If you can buy a full set of BOE best in slot gear, all right, we'll see how it goes. So that's just my thoughts. I have to say the UI, honestly, it's very interesting, like just visually, one way or the other. And like I said, this looks like this even for low level, like, Cataclysm professions or something like that. So it's good. It needed that. It needed a spruce up. And the system is not, super far in development yet, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on that. And I want to open a discussion with you guys, because I'm very interested in you, especially if you guys have knowledge of other MMOs or other games that have crafting as a main system. Tell me how you feel about it in WoW. Tell me if you think there's parallels, but also tell me what you think will happen if, like, things start to become, like, if the best way to get gear is professions. Do you think that's a good thing for the game, or how do you feel about that? So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.